Hey guys, I'm Chris.
Hey everybody, I'm Robert.
And we're the Film Flamers.
Surprise! A special episode for you guys. We have an interview with the new horror director of the movie The Unfamiliar, Henk Pretorius.
That's right. And this is a film that they sent us a screener for, and there's a review embargo and all of that. So this is actually going to be released after the film's release. So we hope that you guys listen to this interview and enjoy it, and then go watch the movie because we really enjoyed it.
That's right. So for those of you who have not heard of The Unfamiliar, it is a movie about a returning war veteran who thinks she may or may not be suffering from PTSD when some strange happenings go on with her and her family. There's a lot of Hawaiian mythology involved in this movie and a lot of guessing and twists and turns.
Yeah, and that makes it really original because I feel like there's a lot of gold to mine, as I'll state later in the interview, with Hawaiian mythology, and he kind of goes into detail and explains why they chose Hawaiian mythology and why it was so interesting to them.
Yeah, it really whet my appetite for more Hawaiian mythology movies. I mean, who knew it was so exciting and unfamiliar, as the movie is called, right? So
sure.
Here's our interview, and stay tuned afterward, and Chris and I will talk about the movie for a minute.
Well, it's really great to meet you.
Yeah, it's great to meet you guys as well. Thank you very much for having me. I'm quite excited about chatting to you guys.
Oh, and thanks for joining us. We're really excited about it.
I'm Chris.
Hi, Chris.
And I'm Robert.
Hi, Robert.
So just so you know who we are, our podcast is called The Film Flamers, and we talk about horror movies, obviously. Sometimes we'll choose new movies or classic movies to deep dive into. And we also have lots of episodes where we talk about recent movies and give reviews and sort of hot takes about. And, so we're super excited to talk about your movie. We really enjoyed it, by the way.
Oh, awesome. I'm very, very glad to hear. But I also checked you guys out after Ashley told me about it. And I'm super impressed and I can't wait. So awesome.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, it's going out literally in a couple of hours. So
I know, right? I'm sure you're very anxious about that too.
I am. And I just got the list of where it's showing and all the platforms and stuff, and it's the first time we're going out in the US, and I have no idea what it means. I have no reference for it. Normally by now I know how many cinema tickets are bought, or I know how many theaters we're going out, and with this is completely new, so yeah, it's quite intense.
So you guys are going to be on VOD as well as some cinema showings as
satellite, VOD, paid TV channel. We're not doing cinema anymore. The big cities won't allow us. Yeah. So they said, well, luckily we've got some premium deals with Direct TV and so forth.
Oh, good.
So all those kinds of things.
And I saw that it's already on pre-sale for iTunes, right?
Yeah. It's pre-selling for until 12 o'clock, and then it's watch now.
Yeah. Awesome. So for our listeners who aren't very familiar with you or your work or this film, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and The Unfamiliar? So
my name is Henk Pretorius. I come from a teen comedy background. So I started with my first film was a teen comedy, and it was called Bakgat, which is an Afrikaans name. And it basically means alpha geek. That's the only way you can really put it, right? And it was about this little guy that wanted this most beautiful girl in high school, but she was only into rugby players, and he had to go and become a real big star in rugby. And that turned out to be a trilogy. So I made an Afrikaans trilogy, which was the first trilogy ever made in South Africa.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And then after that, I've always had a passion for films that appeal to people. When I make a film, I like people getting into cinema, getting excited, and leaving them with an experience. And then I produced about 7 other features in South Africa, all for the local market, or directed some, produced some. And then one film kind of was an outliner, and it started winning awards everywhere, and it called Fani Fries Lebola. Mm-hmm. And on Fani Fries Lebola, it was sent to Seattle Film Festival. I got this invite, come to Seattle. I loved it. I went all the way there with, it was a very long journey. Got there, and then I won the festival. And I didn't know what it meant to win a festival, because Seattle is the most attended festival in North America. And, I didn't know. I had my photo taken on Getty, and then I was like, what is this? It's and then this is my wood. This is my wood. So this is what I want. So
oh, cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
Now, this travel, like just for your listeners, this is like solid metal. Now you're walking around on this as an immigrant in your handbag and, not a great time. And you're walking around and people taking this out, they say, sorry, sir, what is your handbag? And you're like, oh, my award, I won a festival. What festival did you, So it was kind of funny. But anyway, so, and then I did Leading Lady, which was a guy called Gil Bellows and Katie McGraw, which really, really cool people. And that was my first sort of into talent and working in America with American. Gil Bellows was from Shawshank Redemption, and he was in, what's that? He was Billy from, I can never remember the series, but it was like very famous series where he was Billy and playing Billy. And he was in Leading Lady in one of my films, and that got sold to 14 countries. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. So there's a market outside of my home territory. And then I moved to London. I met my business partner, Llewellyn Greef, and we put up a British company that makes international films. And that's how we started working on The Unfamiliar, which is the film you just watched, the horror film. And the first film that will have a proper distribution network in North America.
And that's Dark Matter Studios, right? Is the name of your production company?
Yeah, Dark Matter Studios. That's right.
So we really liked The Unfamiliar. And one of the things that really struck us was that there's a lot of Hawaiian culture and mythology in the film, which is something that you don't get to see very often in movies, especially horror movies. And we just wanted to know, like, what led you to that? And I mean, is it always something that you've been interested in or involved in?
Actually, my co-writer, Jennifer Nicole Stang, brought this really thick book to my attention about Hawaiian mythology. And I had a look at it and I was like, I started reading it, and I don't like reading a lot. So I started reading it. She summarized it. And as she was talking, this story just, sort of evolved organically in front of us. And we were like, wow, this is a side of Hawaii people haven't seen before. Like tourists go to Hawaii, they think they're going to get flowers and smiles and everything's going to be happy. And then they're going to have an all-inclusive holiday, and have fun. But you don't know about the Hawaiian mythology and the Maginas and the night marches and all those things that we don't really speak about or we don't know about as tourists or people that visit Hawaii. And of course, there's only a small amount of people that actually know those stories. And so we delved into them for The Unfamiliar.
Yeah, it's certainly unfamiliar to me, right? So, but yeah, it was an amazing journey in that movie, and it was neat the way that everything was like placed in it, all the different layers of Hawaiian mythology, and the fact that they get to travel to the state of Hawaii, in the film. So it was very, very interesting.
It also seems like there's a lot of gold to mine there that has not been mined before.
Oh yes. And but the thing is with that is like we try to make it true to the plot and be very authentic to the actual mythology. So we didn't overdo it in the first one. Hopefully there'll be another Unfamiliar. We'll see how it goes. But there's a huge story there still waiting to be told about the Hawaiian mythology, and especially the kahuna story, where you really delve into what does it mean to be a kahuna, who can become a kahuna, and the spiritual journey of it's such a wealth of spiritual journey that these people go through in Hawaii. And like the night marches, you actually get tours that you can go and tour on Hawaii, the island, and they'll take you on a tour. And they'll say, listen, if you come on the path of a night marcher, you have to lie down, take off all your clothes, and don't look them in the eye. And that's the actual way you make sure that a night marcher doesn't harm you. So it's quite intense.
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to do that before making the movie or during?
I took off my clothes a couple of times in my younger life. I sort of, stopped doing that later on. But no, we didn't do the tour, but we absolutely indulged in the mythology.
Your film also tackles the tough subject of veteran PTSD in a way that's sensitive, but also advances the horror of the film. How important was it to you to have this in your movie?
It was important in the sense that I was hanging out with a bunch of Marines, and these guys in LA, it was so awesome hanging out with them, first of all, because they had all these stories. But the moment I started asking challenging questions of the scars that you come back with, or I tried to connect on a slightly deeper level, I was brushed off a little bit. And I thought, that's interesting. It's interesting that these people go through these dramatic events, very dramatic, and they don't really want to talk about it. And that's kind of the journey you see Izzy, and that's what I indulge in the Unfamiliar, where she doesn't really talk about it. She doesn't indulge in it too much. She thinks she may have it. And then, of course, you use it as a way to guide or misguide the audience in the journey. But even if it was an intense PTSD, and she did have a traumatic experience that was, as you know, she won't necessarily discuss it in detail with her husband, which made it tricky because you kind of have to show the audience what is going on in her head. And I didn't want to use a voiceover or a device like writing in a diary and then she says what she's thinking. So you got to show it in a performance, in the subtext of the film, that she's actually quite guarded and she doesn't want to show her husband, which is, of course, was quite another challenge to write him, but which we can get into later when we get into the spoil part of this chat.
Mm-hmm.
So these Marines that you were hanging out with at the time, did you go back and consult with them when you were co-writing the movie or directing to sort of like get a different idea of their experiences in real life, or let them know that you're even making a movie about PTSD?
Yes, no, absolutely. We did a bunch of interviews with them. Jennifer did a bunch with them as well. And we really asked them questions and they opened up about it, and they told us what it's about. And even Deed, he's still a friend of mine. He's quite excited to see the film, so I hope I do him justice.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sure he'll like it. So Jemima West, who plays Izzy in the film, and Harry McMillan Hunt, who plays Tommy, and Rachel Lynn as Auntie May are some standout performances for us from your movie. Can you tell us about the casting of the film and what it was like to work with these actors and the rest of the cast?
The casting the film was so interesting. We had this amazing tool in London where it's called Spotlight, where people actually send you videos of themselves doing the role, and then you get to choose, and it's like hundreds of thousands of tapes you get to go through and look for everyone specific. And that's how I found Harry McMillan Hunt, the little kid. And I looked at him and I thought, he just got that he's playing this character in a specific way to mean two things at once. And he knew the subtext of the role. He knew exactly what he was doing without me telling him what to do. And he had the most incredible memory. Like when I started working with him in studio, I could see like you could give him lines and he could just remember them. And you give him a stage direction, same thing. And he just had this like incredible, like he was never tired. He loved what he was doing and he just went for it. And then Jemima West, obviously she didn't have to audition. She's quite a name in Britain. And I offered her the role. We had a chat about the character. She got it. She loved the fact that it's a strong mother trying to keep her family safe, coming back from war. She really liked the angle on it. And she indulged in the script. And from the conversation, we knew we were going to work together. And when we did, she's one of those people that she could really go to the army and survive it. She's that person that just like gets on with it. She did these incredible stuff underwater and these underwater scenes, and we had a limited time to shoot them. And she was just incredible. She did all her own stunts. Wow. She didn't stop. She just carried on and on, take after take. And it was amazing to see the level of professionalism, basically. And then with Rachel Lynn was an interesting choice because she's from Asian descent. Mm-hmm. Whereas the Magina is actually from Asian descent as well, the mythology. So it's actually a Japanese mythology. And so I thought, well, that's interesting. So I thought be quite cool to just put it in there and see if someone sees it, like a little breadcrumb, And I looked at Rachel and I said, well, you gotta learn to speak Hawaii, but there was only 2,000 people basically that can speak Hawaiian. And then the mountain of Pele erupted. Not mountain of Pele, the volcano erupted. And then they thought it was the god Pele that made the volcano erupt. So there was this professor in Hawaii that said, no, you can't help us with this film because we made the volcano erupt. And I said, no, I don't think we did, but I'm very sorry about it. And I said, can you still help us, And I gave him a little backstory. He said, no, I can't. This is what I believe. You made the volcano erupt. So I said, well, I'll need to probably, I don't know, apologize, but then at the same time need someone else to speak Hawaiian. And we had to phonetically teach these actors to say these words. And we got a voice coach in from that's very good with accents to actually learn how to say it. And then Rachel had to learn it, as well as Ethan and so forth. So that's kind of what she had to go through. Plus, she obviously had to do the American accent and all those things. So it was quite a challenging role for her, just in terms of accents, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, obviously they did a good job because I didn't even think twice about any of that.
Oh, yeah. It seemed incredibly natural to me for all of them,
I know we touched on this a little bit, but with the COVID pandemic stretching around the world, cinemas have been closed or running limited businesses for months now. And obviously in the US, independent horror has made headlines this year by topping the box office, mostly due to drive-in theaters. What are your thoughts on releasing a film during a pandemic? And did you ever have to rethink your release strategy?
Yeah, we absolutely have to. Me and my business partner, Llewellyn, we were in a place where we had this cinema deal, this theatrical North American thing. And it's kind of your dream, you dream about it since you're a young kid, you want this. I mean, can you imagine? You guys won't know how American culture influenced us. We used to look up. He's even Chuck Norris, we love him. It's that's to the extent of American culture. We don't even mock him; we love him. So just the idea of going out in cinema was amazing. And then what happened was, I remember the call. Llewellyn gave me a call and he said, "Well, what if everyone takes everything away from us? What are we going to do? What are we going to do?" And then we redesigned our marketing strategy and we went digital. And we said, we're going to get the best players in the world. And we got a company called Just Watch to push our trailer out at the right market, to understand exactly the algorithms, how that work. We're going to get a PR company, actually Starburst, which is a South African-based PR company, but we believe in them 100% that they'll go the extra mile. We're going to team them up with legends like Way Too Blue and big PR companies in North America and so forth. And they're going to be our muscle. And we're going to drive this thing and do as much as we possibly can because we're proud of the film. And obviously, luckily, the streaming platforms and VOD market went up. So at the same time as the theatrical went down, we had an opportunity where people are suddenly at home, they're bored, they don't know what to do, and they click and they're like, oh, there's the unfamiliar, it's a cool trailer, maybe they watch it. The problem is, how do you get through the noise? How do you get through that noise? And luckily, my wife actually is a singer-songwriter. So if you think we have noise in the film industry, the music industry is just incredible. I mean, can you imagine?
Oh, I'm sure.
SoundCloud and all that. Yeah,
exactly. So we took a book from that, and we said, listen, we've got to get through this digital noise, and hopefully we did. Hopefully we did. We'll see tomorrow, I suppose.
Well, the trailer is outstanding. I think it was the first thing that we saw before we watched the movie, and got a chance to talk to you based on that, and we were super interested. So it's a perfect trailer, and I know that people are going to be very interested just based on that. But The Unfamiliar seems to be like your first foray into horror, right? As a director or writer or filmmaker. So what are some of your favorite horror movies? And did you look elsewhere for some inspiration when you got, behind the camera and started to direct your cast?
I got, the thing is, I got this huge box of horrors that my producer left at my door and said, watch them. Because he was so passionate about making horror. And I'm just really scared of it. So I started watching it, and it was education. It was literally from being very scared to being very impressed, and to now looking at the horror masters and going, the John Carpenters or the Kubricks, and going, wow, You guys are incredible. It's a search for the truth in the darkness of humanity. There's a certain authenticity that comes with horror that a lot of genres don't do. They don't delve that deep into it in the search of or in dealing with something that we all feel as human. And that inspired me. That feeling was basically storytelling, but it was a daring storytelling. It was something that you can be brave in, and you can take a character and take everything away from her, all her securities and her family and the ideal family, the idea of gender even, you can take away from this character, and you can see her like fighting it out in facing an invisible enemy, basically. And you can go as far as you want. And that inspired me. So to come back to your question, what the horrors I looked at, I love Stanley Kubrick. I love him because it's not a horror, it's a story, and the story delves into horror. And I know Stephen King and him had a little bit of a thing about so I realized that I'm stepping on some horror toes. And then even films like The Babadook I loved, and Sinister I loved, like the modern classics, Obviously I loved Halloween, and I loved the way John Carpenter took horror into your imagination, and he showed you a little bit, but he didn't show you everything. And you made the monster in your head. And then Sixth Sense, for instance, which is a mainstream horror, I love because of the way the plot twists, and you don't really know what's going on, and the way you used red in it, and the way the side of the story was told, and you can understand the characters' back history, where they were coming from. So there's so many. I don't see horror as a genre anymore. I just see it as good storytelling, and sometimes not so good, but I see it as a story. And it's the opportunity to delve into something a little darker, a little more honest sometimes. And that's what I like about it.
Yeah, that reminds me of something I heard once. I've forgotten who said it, but it was like horror movies are a practice in extreme human empathy.
Yes.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's beautiful.
So we've got a few spoiler questions for you.
Sure.
Starting with, there's a very interesting red herring in your movie that starts when Izzy goes to see the therapist and meets the paranormal expert. And I thought that was a very effective reveal moment in the film, but also serves the teaching moment about preying on victims, PTSD or not. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I'm a filmmaker in the sense that I really indulge in the plot and the character of things, and I look at it very mathematical. So it sounds odd, but what I mean with, I was invested in the story to always guide or misguide you throughout the journey and make it a breadcrumb horror. So it's a horror that leaves you with little clues, and sometimes it guides you to something, and sometimes it misguides you. And so that red herring you specifically talking about the seance is basically one of those moments where you actually think as an audience member, after the seance is revealed as exploitive, you think that you figured it all out. You think, okay, well, now she is insane. She has PTSD or whatever, whatever you want to call it. But basically, we're looking at a woman losing her mind. And that was the point of that scene. It was to show the audience, listen, you actually quite prejudiced towards her now at the moment. Like when it's revealed, maybe she's not. So it was a way to show you that even as an audience member, you sit there. It's always about the information and context. So you can only judge something about the context and the information you have, right? And at that stage, you only had limited amount of information. So you made a prejudiced judgment towards Izzy, which she turned out not to be. And that's kind of the reason why the film is written like it's written, is to show us that every time you think you may be right about something, you may be wrong. And sometimes you may be right about something. That's great. But, and I hope that does it in the film throughout. And even the last beat of the film does that, where I'm saying, you may think I'm saying, well, maybe she should stay at home and, she'll be safe and then look after her family and no, everything will be fine. And then, oh no, maybe it's not that. So I try to leave you with questions rather than answers. And as a filmmaker, I think as a philosopher, philosophy, someone said that it's there to understand the question better and not necessarily to give you the answer. And I think that's, to me, philosophy. It's like I want us to understand questions better, and I want us to delve into our own prejudice and to how we see the world resolving and the information we have, and whether we sometimes may be wrong or sometimes we're right, and maybe leave more room for growth and for better understanding.
I really like the way you talk about that, because to me, a good horror movie is a journey, and a really good horror movie is a maze, right? So it takes you in different places, sometimes dead ends, and sometimes and ultimately will lead you to the end of it, right? And here at the Film Flamers, we oftentimes talk about horror adjacency and how we can find horror aspects in any kind of genre of film. And sometimes the scariest parts of horror movies are the basic everyday life scenarios that we get to see. And I think that The Unfamiliar has a lot of that, right? It has it in spades, because a lot of the movie is about returning home from war and, getting to know your family again and getting to know a child that you gave birth to and really haven't seen in much of its existence, right? And I love the way that you handled this in the movie. And I mean, so was it very important for you to explore those familiar aspects as far as Izzy's character is concerned, and sort of get away from some sort of visceral horror and then lead back to it? Does that make sense? Is that part of your maze?
Yeah,
I guess is the question.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I love that maze analogy. That's really cool. I might take that.
Oh,
but
feel free.
That's a really nice word for it. But what it was is I didn't want to do horror for the sake of horror. I didn't want to do jump scares for the sake of jump scares. I wanted the audience to be inside of her head and feel the anxiety and suspense of that. And also, I didn't want Izzy to be this colorful character and walk around and talk to her husband in a way that's kind of poetic or doesn't feel real. I wanted her to be not middle of the road, but someone coming back from war. There was a British Army doctor that's quite serious about life. She goes there because she feels in an ideology sense that that's the right thing to do, to go and help that country. And she's not going to fight. She's going to heal their wounds. And as she heals their wounds, she becomes wounded and she comes back with scars. But now her family's changed, and she's not completely sure why. And also she thinks maybe it's her fault, because maybe not being there for her young baby and for her, stepdaughter and her son, she obviously feels this guilt. But the problem was in writing the script and with the reveals coming that I couldn't really indulge in her having a conversation with her husband because then I'll give something away, right? So
right.
I had to write it, me and Jenny had to write it in a way that it never delves into that part of the relationship where you just go, listen, this is what's happening in my head. Where are you at, or what are you doing? I had to smoke and mirror, smoke and mirror, smoke and mirror, smoke and mirror. So it was quite a challenge to work with such a complex thing as someone returning from war, having scars on her body, not feeling loved and probably essential anymore, and then at the same time not really being able to be intimate with her husband about it because he's not a husband. So it was that part was quite challenging. But yes, I didn't want the horror to spring off from the first, and I wanted it to be a more psychological thriller, and then later on it reveals itself as a horror. Yeah.
You mentioned that you didn't want to have a jump scare just for the sake of a jump scare. But 3 of my favorite scares in the movie include the masked shadow on the security camera, the daughter killing herself at the piano, and the psychic seance scene. As a new horror director, how do you prepare to shoot and edit those scenes together for maximum impact?
It's such a good question. I think the thing is, I watch a lot of James Wan movies. I'm quite a fan of what he does and how he uses beats to sometimes scary on the second beat or the third beat or the fourth beat. And it's always like mostly fourth beat or second beat. And I looked at the way he was scaring his audience in films. And I thought, except for the seance scene, I'm going to do it by book. I'm just going to go cut, boom. So I'm going to do it on the third beat. I'm going to cut to the vase. When she looks back, boom. And then I'm going to put big sound in. And that was my opportunity to really milk the horror. I wanted to go full cheese. You'll hear like demon voices. You can listen to it in the background, and little chimes and wind chimes and everything you've ever heard in a horror film, you'll see. But in the other scenes, I wanted to be a little bit more subtle or like a little offbeat. And obviously there was one or two. I like the shadow you pointed out. There was a little, I want audiences to have jumps. It's part of the thrill. But I was trying to get it, like the piano scene, for instance, that it's a warning to her that something is not right. So it's a motivated jump scare. It comes from a thematic point of place as well. Whereas suppose you can say the seance is also motivated because they're trying to jump her and scare her and for her to pay more so that she can get rid of the demon. So I wanted the jump scares to have a thematic motivation or character motivation in them as well. There's one now that I'm thinking, I don't think I can really convince you guys that one had a motivation. That's the one where she walks down the hallway and she gets on the toy. But apart from one.
That seance was very effective, though. Like, it really scared the hell out of me. So, like, kudos to your filmmaking. Like, I was terrified. So the ending of The Unfamiliar alludes to the fact that there could be a sequel, right? So is it something that you are interested in doing? And if not, would you ever make another horror film?
I'm enjoying the horror family too much not to make another horror film,
Good. I like to hear that.
Yeah, it's like since I've made a horror film, I feel like I actually have a community, so, which is lovely. So, and especially in COVID and lockdown, where you can go online and, you can talk films and people don't criticize you. They actually talk to you and they listen to you and they say their opinions. It's quite a safe space, which is weird for a horror family, I suppose, but I love it. So just to do that, I would love to do it again. But I wanted to make something fun in horror. Like, so the Unfamiliar is quite it's a serious horror, right? It's dramatic horror. And I loved making it. And to answer your question, I would love to do a sequel or a television show or even a play. I want to put a play up and do The Unfamiliar as a play. Because you can sort of do it, because you've got a limited amount of set. So, and my background's theatre, by the way. I've started in theatre. So, yes, I would love to do something else with The Unfamiliar. And it does leave it open for a sequel, which I've written in my head, but it's completely different to the one you've seen. So it won't be like a sequel where it's like, okay, so now Easy does this. It'll be like something that you've seen it, but you don't think you've seen it, and then it sort of goes on from there. So there is another story to be. That's if the audience wants it to know. But yeah, I want to do a horror comedy as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. That's amazing. Okay, so what's next for you after The Unfamiliar, though? If not the sequel, do you have something already planned, or what does your production studio have lined up?
Yeah, so we are waiting for an actor to say yes to a script, which is one of those. You write them a letter, you present the product, and then you hope they indulge in the content. And if they do say yes, we can make another film very soon. So I'm waiting, and I've already have a studio where I want to shoot it, and everything is there. And then, so this is another film I'm waiting to make, which will probably be in the next 2 to 3 months, I suppose. Yeah.
Nice. Well, I think that I can safely say that Chris and I are looking forward to anything that you do, and we're very excited for people to get to see The Unfamiliar and fall in love with it like we did.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot, and thank you for having me as well and indulging in the film. I know how big ask it is to actually like watch it. It's like I look at what you guys do, and I think it's so cool because. with COVID, I had this like thing where I'm like, I'm so self-indulgent. I do all these films and then I talk about them. And then I was like, maybe I should start a podcast and talk about other people's stuff, So I have a lot of admiration for what you guys do. I think it's awesome.
Well, I mean, and we have a lot of admiration for directors, writers, anybody in film. This is an art form that Chris and I love very, very much. And, we're super excited to get to talk to somebody who is doing it and making it. It's very exciting. And, so yeah, we really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk to us for sure.
I think that about covers it. That's all of our questions. Thank you so much for your time. You went into so much detail and you didn't have to. So again, thank you very much.
No, awesome. Thank you both guys. And I hope we chat again when I make my next thing, and hopefully you guys can come to set. That'd be awesome.
Oh yeah, we'd love that.
Oh my God, yeah, we'd love that for sure.
That'd be awesome. Cool guys, thank you very much, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you.
All right, good luck.
Cool, thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
So yeah, he was super awesome to talk to. I don't know. I obviously don't have a lot of experience talking to film directors. And
except for the ones that call in with angry voicemails. Yeah.
I know it's so good to talk to a director who's nice and engaging. Yeah. So, and it was super interesting. Everything that he had to say about the making of the movie, beforehand, pre-production and during. And, I'm kind of excited to see what else he does as a horror director, right?
Yeah, and I would be really interested to see that sequel that he's
definitely
hoping to make, It's always good to see that someone's passionate enough in their project, especially a film, that they would be interested enough to make an actual sequel, if it performs well enough, if he can justify it.
And based on our conversation, I kind of feel like he found a love of the horror genre. And I think that, once you go horror, you don't want to go back or something like that,
Yeah. Well, it would be fun to see that he said he wants to foray into horror comedy, and he said he really found a community in the, in horror, and that's what we have found, certainly. So,
and we love horror comedies here at the Film Flamers. We dedicate every April episode to them. So Hank, bring it on. Right. So I just wanted to talk about a couple things in the movie that I liked a lot. I really enjoyed some of the really scary moments in this. Like we talked about in the interview, the seance for me was key. It was a really effective moment for me in this movie. And I was just terrified watching it.
A lot of the security camera footage is creepy. I mentioned those 3 scares for me, and they're different scares, because one's straight up jump scare. Another one's just creeping dread. And another one just is more like a terror, with the daughter killing herself at the piano and that kind of dream sequence, and so I thought there was quite a variety of different, horror in this movie. And, it's definitely worth a watch just for the variety, because it's not just a one beat film. Like he said, it does kind of go through a maze, a little bit. And that's just, you get to enjoy different types of horror and different mythology and, different, thoughts about where the movie's going, which, may or may not be true.
And we're not going to spoil too much. I mean, at least just based on what you heard in the interview is probably the extent of our spoilers in this episode, because we really want people to go and watch the movie. But I really like a horror film that has lots of twists, and especially when you don't really see them coming. And at least for me, I didn't see a lot of these twists coming. Or I didn't see where the end of this movie was going from it. And, we had talked about earlier this year, we talked about The Wretched, right? And I think that sometimes twists are not so good, but in this particular movie, I felt that the twist was excellent. And there were many of them. I also liked the familiar aspect in this movie, lots of different family members and what it must be like to return from war and have to readjust to life. I mean, that's horror adjacency in real life, at its finest. And it's something that I really appreciate.
The only time that I thought, man, this writing is lazy was when she went to the therapist and met that supposed paranormal expert, but there was a reason for that, and it hung a lantern on it later, and obviously, it turned out to be something else, so there was a very good reason for that, and kind of, brought my expectations back up, because I was like, oh my God, okay, here we go. Here's the trope. But it's a subversion of that trope, which was great to see, because I'm not sure I can remember another horror movie that doesn't, if it's going to do that trope, that it doesn't reverse on it, where the psychic is not real or something like that. It usually just doubles down to get the audience on board with whatever's happening, to validate their feelings for whatever they're seeing on the screen. But for this, it really acts as a really kind of solid red herring, and I really enjoyed that aspect of the film.
And I really enjoyed Jemima West's performance in this movie. I thought that it was very grounded all the way through, super believable. I thought that, the scars on her body and the way that she reacted to them, both toward her husband and to herself, just really make the movie a good watch. And I was super excited when he said that maybe he would want to turn it into a play, because, like I've said before on the show, I like very small character set movies with very few locations, and this is just one of them. This would make an amazing stage play, and dare I say, an amazing musical.
I knew you were going to say that.
So Hank, if you're listening to this, like when you start to work on the stage production, throw in some songs, make it a musical. Come on. I think it would be great.
Backup chorus.
That's right. I will send you my audition tape for the musical with Presently. I also have to say, because this was a video conference, that he's super good looking. So, I'm not ashamed to say that. So, thank you, sir.
So we have a hottest guy segment for our interviews now?
The hottest guy in the Unfamiliar is the director, Henk Pretorius, for sure. Whew.
All right. Well, now that we made it awkward, that about wraps up our discussion and interview with about the Unfamiliar movie. Please go and check it out. You can do so on iTunes or DirecTV, or I'm guessing other streaming services based on our conversation.
Yeah, just do a search on Google for The Unfamiliar. It'll give you all the different watch options for it. Just pick the one that you have and watch it. I promise, you will not be disappointed. It's a good horror movie, and I think that people will enjoy it.
Yeah, I will definitely be watching Hank's horror career from here on out.
That's right. Well, guys, let us know what you think about The Unfamiliar when you watch it, and let us know what you think about our interview with Henk. We may be doing some more of these interviews in the future, and if it's something that you'd like to see at the Film Flamers, you can let us know at the Film Flamers on Twitter, Facebook, or even Instagram.
You can email us at tiredqueens@filmflamers.com, or please call our hotline at 972-666-7733. Leave your voice message and we'll play it on the air in the next Shooting the Flames episode.
We are just getting started here in September, guys, so keep looking forward to your feeds. We're going to be talking about one of Chris's and mine's favorite horror films, Poltergeist, coming up very soon.
And after that, White Noise.
And as you recall, we had a special Hot Takes episode way back in July. And it's time for another one. So Chris and I have been busy watching movies and TV shows, and we have a lot of things to say about the stuff that we've been watching. So stay tuned.
And over on Patreon, we've released a poll for what to flash back on for Patreon this month. So if you're not already a patron, go over there and become one. Join the team and cast your vote.
That's right. You can cast your vote at patreon.com/thefilmflamers. Well, Chris, I think it's time we head out.
Yeah.
And maybe have some
unfamiliar dreams.
Unfamiliar dreams. God, I wish I could say this in Hawaiian. Sweet dreams.
I was about to say Hakuna Matata.
That's not Hawaiian.
He said kahuna.
But Kahuna Matata?
That's culturally insensitive, Robert, and I'm ashamed of you.
You started it.